A corrections officer dumped a bottle of his stink urine on a Rikers Island inmate after being splashed with the offender's pee, according to a city administrative court ruling. N.Y C, 39, told superiors that he was escorting inmates back to their housing areas in November 2019 when he felt liquid land on his sleeve and neck. In what he confessed was a weak point, N.Y C, 39, admitted he then urinated into an empty Gatorade bottle and splashed it into the unidentified inmate face. What a blickhead. Global Village Space News web portal. N.Y.C prison guard dumps urine on Rikers inmate in anger. N.Y.C prison guard dumps urine on Rikers inmate in anger. 5. The former corrections officer at Rikers Island has been recommended for firing by an administrative judge after he dumped his own urine on an inmate. N.Y.C, who had been with the department since 2011, admitted to the incident, claiming that he had been splashed with the inmate's urine and had acted in anger. However, the judge ruled that Marilis had acted in a methodical and deeply disturbing manner and had shown a troubling degree of uncontrolled anger and calculated retaliation. Marilis had previously faced disciplinary action for domestic violence and excessive force charges. They call him PP Man. An incarcerated man died at the Rikers Island complex early Sunday morning. It was the 4th death in the jail system this month and the 7th this year. The detainee, Curtis Davis, 44, who had been held, was found unresponsive in his cell, according to internal records obtained by the New York Times. Long besieged by a multitude of problems, Rikers Island and the city's other jail facilities have been engulfed in violence and disorder. 7 people died this year. 2023 gone. Rikers Island inmate swiped an officer's uniform from a jailhouse gym and disguised himself as a guard to escape Thursday but got nabbed walking out the door, say officials and law enforcement sources. Cops and ambulances called to home of top N.Y.C cancer doc at least twice before she killed baby, self. Neighbor. Cops and ambulances called to home of top N.Y.C cancer doc at least. Prominent N.Y.C cancer doctor shot her baby and then turned the gun on herself in suspected murder-suicide. Police. Prominent N.Y.C cancer doctor shot her baby and then turned the Long Island castle owner wants N.Y.C to ship migrants to his struggling upstate hotel but hasn't heard back. Long Island castle owner wants N.Y.C to ship migrants to his Metro. Rikers Island inmate swipes officer's uniform from gym to pose as guard and nearly escapes. By Larry Salona, Joe Marino, and Natalie O'Neill. July 28, 2023, 12:27 p.m. A Rikers Island inmate swiped an officer's uniform from a jailhouse gym and disguised himself as a guard to escape Thursday but got nabbed walking out the door, say officials and law enforcement sources. More on Rikers Island accused N.Y.C subway killer Claude White allegedly stabs mental health doc on Rikers Island. 4 N.Y.C correction officers attacked by inmates in recent Rikers incidents. 3 N.Y.C doc staffers suspended following latest Rikers inmate death. Rikers Island inmate found dead for 7th time this year. Advertisement. The inmate, Bokeem Jones, 28, attempted to stroll out of the 400-capacity Otis Bantam Correctional Center while dressed in the Department of Corrections uniform around 10:25 p.m., the doc and sources said. Jones, who'd been locked up on Brooklyn assault charges, knocked on a locked door, was let out and began casually walking down a corridor when eagle-eyed staffers finally recognized him and ordered him to stop, according to a doc report and sources. The suspect instead struck a fighting stance and bolted away from officers, prompting guards to deploy a chemical agent, possibly pepper spray, and restrain him, the report and sources said. A mental health clinician working on Rikers Island was stabbed in the face and arm by a detainee accused of stabbing a man to death on a Manhattan subway train, the Daily News has learned. The clinician was attacked in a clinic in the jail's George R. Vierno Center on Saturday, according to multiple sources. He was taken to New York Presbyterian Hospital where he needed stitches for his wounds, Correction Department sources said. The 6'3", 319-pound Claude White was taken to Bellevue Hospital for psychiatric evaluation after the attack. A weapon was found at the scene, the sources said. White has been charged with attacking the clinician, but the specific charges were not immediately known. White was arrested June 19 for the murder of Tavon Silver, 32, 2 days earlier on a Brooklyn-bound 4 train about 4 a.m. A strap hanger came across Silver bleeding heavily from a chest wound and falling in and out of consciousness between 23rd St. and Union Square. At Union Square, the strap hanger notified the train conductor, who called 911. Medics took Silver to Bellevue Hospital, where he died. At his arrest, White was also charged with a robbery earlier in June. He had at least 7 prior arrests for robbery, assault, and grand larceny going back to 2010. Federal government takeover of New York's notorious Rikers Island jail are likely to grow after a stabbing suspect died in his cell early on Sunday morning, the 7th inmate death this year and the 26th since New York's mayor, Eric Adams, took office in January 2022. Curtis Davis, 44, was found lifeless on the floor of his cell at about 5:10 m, according to Correction Department records. Davis had been held since June 1 for allegedly stabbing a 29-year-old man in the eye. Federal government takeover of New York's notorious Rikers Island jail are likely to grow after a stabbing suspect died in his cell early on Sunday morning, the 7th inmate death this year and the 26th since New York's mayor, Eric Adams, took office in January 2022. The $3 billion to build one of the facilities set to replace the crumbling and troubled Rikers Island jail complex, according to a proposed contract announced by New York City. The contract with Tudor Perini Corp to design and build a Brooklyn facility means that one of the 4 proposed jails meant to replace Rikers wouldn't be completed until at least summer 2029, 2 years after the required deadline for the complex's closure. 4 city correction officers were attacked by inmates, including one notorious for assaulting jail guards in 2 recent incidents on Rikers Island, according to officials and union reps. Cops and ambulances called to home of top N.Y.C. cancer doc at least twice before she killed baby, self. Neighbor cops and ambulances called to home of top N.Y.C. cancer doc at least. Prominent N.Y.C. cancer doctor shot her baby and then turned the gun on herself in suspected murder-suicide. Police. Prominent N.Y.C. cancer doctor shot her baby and then turned the Long Island castle owner wants N.Y.C. to ship migrants to his struggling upstate hotel but hasn't heard back. Long Island castle owner wants N.Y.C. to ship migrants to his Metro. 4 N.Y.C. correction officers attacked by inmates in recent Rikers incidents by Tina Moore, Craig McCarthy, and Amanda Woods. July 26, 2023. 4:41 p.m. 4 city correction officers were attacked by inmates, including one notorious for assaulting jail guards in 2 recent incidents on Rikers Island, according to officials and union reps. More on Rikers Island. Accused N.Y.C. subway killer Claude White allegedly stabs mental health doc on Rikers Island. Rikers Island inmate swipes officer's uniform from gym to pose as guard and nearly escapes. 3 N.Y.C. doc staffers suspended following latest Rikers inmate death. Rikers Island inmate found dead for 7th time this year. Advertisement. The first incident happened when an inmate was being escorted from the clinic to his cell at the North Infirmary Command around 6:20 p.m. Saturday, when he became combative, according to a doc spokesperson and the Correction Officers Benevolent Association, COBA. Officers attempted to de-escalate the situation and deployed pepper spray when the inmate, Michael Megginson, didn't comply, according to city and union officials. But Megginson, who has allegedly attacked correction officers more than 40 times over the past year, he's been behind bars on assault charges, then became unruly and ripped a sink out of the wall of a cell where he was taken for decontamination, according to the union. One of the officers was stabbed in the left arm, another sustained a puncture wound to the buttocks, and a third, who helped take the inmate to the ground, complained of pain, the union said. Then on Tuesday, Lamar Evans, who was being held on robbery and menacing charges at the George R. Vierno Center, attacked another correction officer, according to officials and records. He had been carrying a weapon when the officer asked him to drop it, but he refused, the union said. The officer used his pepper spray, but that didn't stop Evans from using the same weapon to slash the guard behind the ear, according to the union. Injured correction employee was taken to the Elmhurst Hospital Center, where he was listed in stable condition. A fire set by an inmate at New York City's notorious Rikers Island jail has left 20 people injured. On the same day, a group of state Democratic lawmakers visited the complex to show opposition to Governor Kathy Hochul's proposed changes to bail laws. The blaze, which erupted around 1:20 p.m. Thursday in the North Infirmary Command area, left 15 Rikers staff members and 5 inmates hurt. Officials said, "The health and safety of those who work and live in our facilities is our main priority," James Boyd, the New York City Department of Corrections Deputy Commissioner for Public Information, said in a statement obtained by Fox News Digital. We take arson very seriously, and will pursue re-arrest of the individual involved pending the outcome of the investigation. The 5 inmates and 10 of the 15 staff members were taken to local hospitals due to smoke inhalation and to receive a medical evaluation, the Department of Corrections also said. An inmate awaiting trial for murdering his pregnant girlfriend was sentenced Wednesday to 10 years in prison for stabbing a Rikers Island correction officer 12 times in the head with a sharpened piece of metal. Prosecutors said. Dennis Applewhite, 29, pleaded guilty February 7 to a charge of first-degree attempted assault for the unprovoked attack on the officer last Halloween in a protective custody unit in Rikers Anna M. Cross Center. This was a brazen, unprovoked attack against a correction officer who was working his shift, said Bronx District Attorney Darcel Clark. Benny Bossio, president of the Correction Officers Benevolent Association, said Applewhite was trying to kill the officer and that the 10-year sentence doesn't go nearly far enough. This brazen and unprovoked vicious assault on our officer was nothing short of attempted murder, Bossio said. More than 80% of the inmates in our custody are facing violent felony charges, and they don't stop committing violent crimes while they are in jail. Without meaningful consequences for these types of assaults, no one in our jails can be safe. It's time to stop coddling violent felons and start protecting our officers. Applewhite, who is 6 feet 6, walked up to the 28-year-old officer about 4:45 p.m. on October 31 and stabbed him repeatedly in the back of the head with an 8-inch piece of sharpened metal, prosecutors said. Other correction officers sprang to their colleagues' aid and wrestled Applewhite to the floor. The badly wounded officer suffered multiple lacerations to his head and a puncture to the right side of his neck that left him still unable to fully turn his head. Mayor Adams visited the officer in the hospital later that day, and called the attack vicious and senseless. Neither the correction department nor Clark's office would say Wednesday where Applewhite got the metal used to make the weapon he wielded in the attack. Protective custody is supposed to include heightened security measures. A draft Board of Correction report obtained by the Daily News said 90% of weapons seized from January through March 2022 were made from pieces ripped from the aging jails, like plexiglass, metal rods, sharpened metal, sharpened plastic, sharpened wood, glass, institutional razors, screws, nails, and razor ribbon. In March 2022, 8 months before Applewhite's attack on the officer, the Correction Department told a federal court-appointed monitor tracking violence in the jails that removing alien infrastructure items was a priority. More than 4,000 weapons were recovered between January and August 2022, but October saw 46 slashings, one of the highest totals of the year, the Board of Correction report said.